My phone vibrated against a pallet of shrink-wrapped paper towels at 2:17 a.m. Night inventory always made time feel artificial. Fluorescent lights, no windows, forklifts moving like quiet insects. Phoenix heat still trapped in the concrete, even after midnight. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Most late messages are mistakes or spam. But the vibration kept going. Not a call, just a follow-up attachment loading slow on the warehouse Wi-Fi. One line of text. I got a text about my wife's underwear. I sent it where she never expected. Under it, a photo. Black lace underwear on a tile floor I didn't recognize. Not ours. Not any hotel we'd stayed in. I knew the pattern because I bought it last Christmas, specialty store, wrapped in red paper, joked about the price at the register. Emily's. I zoomed without thinking. Left corner of the frame showed a baseboard heater and a scuff shaped like a half moon. Details fix themselves in your head when something is wrong. I checked the sender again. No name. No thread history. Just that line in the image. A forklift reversed somewhere behind me. Beep. 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 Normal sounds continuing like nothing had shifted, but something had. Cleanly. Permanently. I didn't feel heat. No spike of anger. Just a pressure change, like a door opening somewhere inside my chest. My normal life. The morning coffee at 6:30, her foundation meetings, the shared calendar on the fridge, it didn't feel damaged. It felt concluded. I put the phone face down on the pallet, finished counting the remaining cases, and wrote the number on my clipboard in pen. Accuracy first. Reaction later. Before that night, my life had a shape to it. I was a shift supervisor at a regional warehouse off I-10. 10 years in, same company. I knew the rhythm of trucks backing in before they signaled. I knew which guys cut corners when the cameras weren't pointed their direction. Order mattered to me. Patterns mattered. Emily used to say that was why she felt safe with me. We'd been together 7 years. Married 4. We met at a volunteer build site through her church network. She was organizing sponsorships. I was helping frame interior walls. She liked that I didn't talk much. Said I was steady. Our mornings were predictable. Coffee at 6:30. She preferred almond milk. I didn't care what went in mine. She'd scroll through foundation emails while I reviewed shift notes on my tablet. No TV. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the small sounds people make when they think everything is fine. Her charity foundation had grown fast over the last 2 years. Public events, donor dinners, team retreats. Her family was tightly connected to it. Her sister on outreach, her cousin handling digital marketing, her mother coordinating church partnerships. They were visible, active, reputable. I saw that as stability. When she started coming home later, it made sense. Expansion brings pressure. She said the board wanted more measurable impact, more presence, more travel. I told myself success has seasons. There were small shifts. Location sharing turned off to save battery. A new passcode on her phone after a supposed phishing attempt. More overnight strategy sessions in Sedona or Flagstaff. I noticed. I didn't challenge. Because challenging suggests distrust, and I didn't want to be the insecure husband who couldn't handle an ambitious wife. Sunday breakfasts stayed the same. Pancakes. Blueberry if we had them. She'd sit across from me in workout clothes, telling me about donors and volunteer logistics. She was animated when she talked about work. More animated than she'd been about us in a while. I adjusted to that quietly. The underwear in the photo wasn't random. It was the pair she packed before what she called a leadership conference in Sedona 3 weeks earlier. I remember because she hesitated at the dresser, then folded it carefully into her bag instead of the usual cotton ones. I made a joke about dressing up for seminars. She said, "It's nice to feel confident." At the time, that felt normal. Looking back from the warehouse floor, phone in my hand, all those moments lined up differently. Not dramatic, not explosive, just aligned. Predictable life. Stable marriage. Respectable family. That was the version I had been protecting. Standing there between racks of inventory, I understood something without saying it out loud. Stability can be maintained by routine, but truth ignores routine. And I had just been handed something that didn't fit the shape of my life. I didn't call the number. I didn't text back. I didn't zoom the photo again. I put the phone in my locker and finished the shift the way I always did, reconciling counts, signing manifests, correcting 2 minor discrepancies in aisle 12. Routine first. But something in me had shifted from assumption to assessment. On the drive home, I replayed the last 6 months the way I review surveillance footage after a damaged shipment. Not emotionally, structurally. The work retreat in Sedona had been positioned as mandatory. 3 days at a rental property owned by a donor. She'd said reception was poor, which explained the short calls. I remembered the slight echo in her voice when we spoke. High ceilings, maybe tile floors. The baseboard heater in the photo. The new mentor she'd mentioned around the same time. A consultant brought in to help scale operations. Older. Experienced. Really sharp, she'd said. I'd never met him. His name came up often enough to sound professional, never personal. Passwords changed across shared accounts in April. She'd blamed a security scare at the foundation. I'd accepted that without checking further. There was also the underwear, the kind she reserved for anniversaries or trips where we were alone. She packed it for that conference and came home saying she'd been exhausted. Before the photo, those details were isolated. After the photo, they formed a pattern. Patterns don't shout. They align. I pulled into our driveway just before sunrise. The house looked the same. Trimmed hedges, porch lights still on from the timer. A neighbor's sprinkler ticking across concrete. Inside, Emily was asleep on her side of the bed. Phone charging face down. Suitcase still half unpacked in the corner from her last overnight event. I stood there longer than I should have. Not searching, not accusing, just observing. Her breathing was steady, untroubled. Whatever had happened, if anything had not followed her home in visible ways. I showered, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table the way we always did. When she came downstairs, she kissed my cheek like routine demanded. Long shift, she asked. Inventory, I said. She talked about an upcoming fundraiser, about donor fatigue, about needing to tighten internal reporting. I listened carefully, not for lies, but for inconsistencies. When she mentioned another overnight planning session next week, something inside me went quiet instead of reactive. I wasn't trying to reassure myself anymore. I wasn't trying to preserve the narrative. I was cataloging. By mid-morning, I had requested access logs from our shared credit card portal under the pretense of reviewing household expenses. I made a note of the Sedona rental date. I wrote down the consultant's full name from her foundation website. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even look at her differently. But I stopped filling in gaps with trust. That was the change. Not anger. Clarity. By the second night, the number that sent the photo still hadn't called again. No follow-up. No threat. Just that single line and the image. Whoever sent it wasn't trying to negotiate. They were informing. I reviewed the credit card activity after dinner while Emily was on a video call in the office. The Sedona rental matched the weekend she described. 3-night booking. Paid in full. But there was an additional charge from a catering company local to that address. Private service, not part of any hotel package. I wrote it down. Her phone lit up twice during the call. She turned it face down each time without breaking conversation. That detail stayed with me. If you've made it this far, this story clearly caught your attention. If you're enjoying it, drop a like on the video. It helps me see what kind of stories you want more of next. Let's keep going. Around 11:30, she came to bed and fell asleep quickly. I stayed awake longer than usual, not scrolling, not searching her phone, just thinking through sequence. Confrontation would produce denial. Denial would produce noise. Noise would bury facts. Facts needed light. At 12:18 a.m., I unlocked my phone and reopened the message. The photo felt less shocking now, more evidentiary. The line above it repeated in my mind. I sent it where she never expected. The phrasing wasn't emotional. It was deliberate. I checked the foundation's public communication channels. They maintained a church charity coordination group, relatives, board members, senior volunteers. Dozens of names. People invested in image and structure. For 4 years, I had protected Emily's reputation instinctively, covered small oversights, managed perceptions during family disagreements, smoothed over awkward donor dinners when she was exhausted. I realized I was still doing that in my head, protecting the version of her that might not exist. My thumb hovered over the forward option longer than I anticipated, not because I doubted the photo, but because I understood the weight of distribution. Once information enters a room like that, it doesn't retract. I attached the image. No caption, no commentary, no accusation, just the original message in the photograph. I didn't add context. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain how I received it. One quiet tap. Sent. The screen returned to stillness. There was no rush of satisfaction, no spike of adrenaline, just a release, like setting down something heavy I had been holding for years without realizing it. I muted my phone immediately afterward. Then I placed it face down on the nightstand and turned off the lamp. Emily slept through it. The house remained silent. But somewhere, in a group thread filled with people who built their identities on service and moral alignment, a new reality had just entered the conversation. I didn't try to control what would happen next. I stopped protecting a story that no longer held. I woke up at 6 a.m. without an alarm. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then I remembered. My phone was still face down on the nightstand. I didn't reach for it immediately. I showered first, shaved, dressed for work. Routine before reaction. Emily was already in the kitchen when I walked in, coffee poured, posture tight. "You sent something last night," she said. "Not what did you send? Not why. Just that." I forwarded a message, I replied. Her phone was in her hand now. Notifications stacked along the top of the screen like pressure cracks. "It's a setup," she said quickly. "Someone is trying to damage the foundation. This is manipulation." I nodded once. "That's possible." She stared at me, searching for something, accusation, emotion, argument. I gave her none. By the time I reached the warehouse, my muted phone showed 47 unread messages in the group thread. I didn't open them all at once. I read them chronologically, the way I review incident reports. Shock first, then confusion. Her sister asking for clarification. A board member requesting verification of the image's origin. Someone suggesting the number be traced. Emily's responses came in clusters. "This is malicious. Someone is targeting me." The photo is being taken out of context. Out of context. No one in the thread defended the image itself. They questioned timing. Source. Motive. Around mid-morning, the tone shifted. A volunteer mentioned the Sedona property. Said the retreat house had been reserved exclusively for leadership. Asked why private catering had been billed separately. Another person referenced travel reimbursements that didn't align with reported dates. Facts began surfacing without my involvement. I did not contribute. I did not confirm. At 11:12 a.m., a message appeared from a name I didn't recognize. A woman from Colorado. She wrote that she had rented the Sedona property the week after the retreat. She found the black lace underwear in a bedroom drawer and had searched the brand online. A recent delivery confirmation label had Emily's first name on it. She had texted the number attached to the delivery record out of confusion. That number was mine. The room in the group chat changed again. No one needed my voice. By afternoon, the foundation's finance coordinator requested an emergency board call. The property owner added details about guest logs. Emily stopped messaging for 3 hours. When she finally posted again, the tone had shifted from denial to explanation. Words like misunderstanding, professional boundaries, personal mistake. I locked my phone and returned to inventory reconciliation. Forklifts moved. Orders shipped. Pallets stacked. Reality was restructuring itself without my interference. For years, I had believed protecting her meant shielding problems quietly. Now I understood something different. Facts do not require volume. They require exposure. By the end of that week, it was no longer a private matter between Emily and me. The foundation board scheduled an internal review. The word they used in the email was assessment. Neutral, measured, designed to avoid panic. Her sister called twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. The messages were controlled but strained. Asking what I knew, asking why I had forwarded the photo instead of coming to family first. I didn't respond. At work, I kept my head down. The warehouse didn't care about reputations or retreats. Shipments still had to clear. Drivers still needed signatures. There was something steady in that. Meanwhile, the group thread continued without my participation. The Colorado woman provided screenshots of her rental agreement. The property owner confirmed the retreat dates and guest access logs. Someone on the board flagged irregular expense reports tied to consulting fees. The mentor's name appeared openly now. Questions sharpened. Had private lodging been used for non-program purposes? Were foundation funds misallocated? Why were certain travel receipts submitted under outreach initiatives? Emily posted a longer message late Friday afternoon. She acknowledged a personal lapse in judgment, but insisted no funds were misused. She described the relationship as emotionally complicated, but denied physical impropriety during official events. The phrasing was careful. The facts were less so. Another board member responded that the catering expense had been billed under youth programming. That detail lingered in the thread longer than anything else. By Monday morning, the board had retained outside counsel to review compliance policies. The foundation's social media accounts went temporarily silent. 2 scheduled fundraising events were postponed. The situation expanded beyond marriage. Her family moved from defense to containment. Statements about transparency, about upholding mission integrity, about cooperating fully with review procedures. I watched it unfold the way I watch inventory discrepancies resolve themselves once the right documents surface. There was an unexpected development midweek. The Colorado renter followed up privately to the group, explaining she had initially assumed the underwear belonged to a previous guest. When she saw the delivery label fragment in the drawer, Emily's first name and part of our address, she felt obligated to clarify. She apologized for any unintended consequences. No one blamed her. By then, it was clear the photo hadn't created the problem. It had revealed one. Emily stopped coming home at consistent hours. Meetings with board counsel replaced donor dinners. Her tone with me shifted from defensive to distant negotiation. Brief conversations about logistics, schedules, perception. We moved around each other like co-workers during a restructuring. I didn't escalate. I didn't argue. The structure we had built, marriage, reputation, routine, was collapsing under its own weight, and I wasn't trying to hold it up anymore. We agreed to meet at Sky Harbor. Public place. Midday. Neutral ground. She suggested a private room somewhere quiet. I chose the airport cafe near Terminal 4, constant movement, background noise, people too busy to stare long at anyone else's problem. I arrived early and sat facing the entrance. When Emily walked in, she looked composed in the way people do before performance reviews. Navy blazer. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, controlled breathing. She set her bag down and didn't order anything. I didn't expect you to handle it that way, she said. That's clear, I replied. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't hostile. It was procedural. She slid her phone across the table and opened a message thread with the consultant. It was curated, professional language, measured tone. No overt intimacy. No incriminating phrasing. That's the context, she said. It wasn't what people are making it. I looked at the screen briefly, then at her. The photo exists, I said. She exhaled slowly. It wasn't planned. It wasn't ongoing. That's your version. Her jaw tightened. You think I would risk everything? The foundation, my family, us? I let the question sit without answering it. She shifted tactics. It was emotional. I felt invisible at home. We were distant. It blurred. There it was, the soft redistribution of responsibility. I didn't argue the feeling. I didn't defend myself. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a printed copy of the Colorado renter's message on the table. Then the catering invoice. Then the expense report classification. I'm not debating feelings, I said. I'm looking at sequence. Her eyes moved over the documents, slower this time. The funds weren't misused, she said quietly. Then, that will be verified. Her posture changed. Less defiant. More calculating. What do you want? She asked. I thought about that carefully. I want clarity. I want separation of finances. I want this resolved without public escalation beyond what's already happened. You're leaving, she said. I'm stepping out of the structure that no longer holds. She studied me as if waiting for anger to surface. It didn't. No counseling? She asked. Not from this position. For a moment, the noise of the terminal filled the space between us. Flight announcements, rolling luggage, espresso machines hissing. Her voice softened. It didn't mean what you think. I met her eyes. It meant enough. That was the first time she looked uncertain about recovery. She tried once more. We can repair this quietly. I'm not trying to repair an image, I said. I'm responding to facts. The conversation tapered after that. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Transactional. We discussed temporary living arrangements. Access to shared accounts. The board's timeline for internal review. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. You're not even angry, she said. I'm finished. There's a difference. I walked toward the parking garage without looking back. For the first time in weeks, the air felt clear. After the airport meeting, events stopped requiring my input. The foundation's board announced a temporary restructuring while their compliance review moved forward. Publicly, it was framed as a leadership recalibration. Internally, it was damage control. Emily's access to certain financial accounts was suspended pending review. Her speaking engagements were reassigned. The consultant's contract was terminated within a week. Her sister called again, this time not defensive, just tired. She said the board had uncovered inconsistencies in documentation, nothing criminal, but enough to require formal correction. Donors were asking questions. Church leadership wanted written assurances. I listened without comment. At home, the house felt transitional, not hostile, just hollowed out. We moved through rooms like tenants aware of an approaching inspection. I met with an attorney recommended by a colleague at work. Not aggressive, methodical. We reviewed assets, joint accounts, property titles. Everything documented cleanly. I'm not looking to escalate, I told him. Then don't, he said. File clearly. Stay consistent. Don't argue in writing. That advice fit my nature. I opened a separate checking account, redirected my paycheck. Not to punish, just to prevent confusion. I left shared utilities untouched for the moment. Emily noticed the financial separation quickly. You didn't tell me, she said. It's procedural, I replied. Her tone shifted over the next few days. Less denial, more negotiation. We don't have to formalize this yet, she said one evening. Let the board finish their review. Let things stabilize. I'm not basing decisions on optics, I said. The board's findings were summarized in a private letter. Policy violations regarding disclosure of personal relationships, misuse of program classifications for non-program expenses, failure to maintain transparency with leadership. No criminal charges. No public scandal beyond what had already circulated. But enough. Emily resigned before the final vote. The announcement described it as a voluntary step to preserve the mission's integrity. I didn't comment publicly. My attorney filed for separation the following week. No dramatic filings. No claims of misconduct. Just irreconcilable differences and documented financial delineation. When the paperwork arrived for her signature, she didn't refuse. She asked once more if we were moving too fast. We've been moving slowly for years, I said. Her family shifted from public defense to private quiet. Plans for a summer fundraising gala were canceled. Her sister took interim leadership. The consultant disappeared from social media entirely. The structure that once felt immovable adjusted itself without collapse. At work, my shifts continued unchanged. Inventory, scheduling, minor conflicts resolved with straightforward solutions. There was something steady in that. One afternoon, Emily stood in the doorway of the guest room, now hers, and said, I thought you would fight. I did, I answered, just not in the way she expected. The paperwork moved through the system cleanly. No shouting, no retaliation, no spectacle, just signatures and space. The separation finalized faster than most people expected. There were no court battles, no contested filings, just a scheduled appearance, a brief confirmation of terms, and signatures entered into record. 14 minutes inside a municipal building that processes endings every day. We divided assets according to what we had documented. The house went on the market quietly. No staging photos online, no open house spectacle. A private sale through an agent who understood discretion. When the offer came in, we accepted it without negotiation. I moved into a smaller rental near the warehouse. 2 bedrooms, minimal yard, less square footage, less maintenance, less history embedded in the walls. The first night there, I sat on the floor with a folding chair and a single lamp. No television, no framed photographs, just silence that felt clean instead of heavy. People reached out, some with sympathy, some with curiosity disguised as concern, a few with indirect attempts to gather details about the foundation review. I kept responses short. It ran its course. That was enough. Emily's resignation became old news quickly. The foundation reorganized. New compliance policies were published. Donors returned gradually once transparency measures were formalized. The consultant's name disappeared from public association with the organization. I never asked where he went. I didn't feel triumph. There was no satisfaction in watching structures shift. It was simply the natural outcome of exposure. One afternoon, I met with my attorney to finalize remaining logistics. He looked at the file and said, "This was unusually efficient." "I prefer clarity," I replied. He nodded like he'd seen the opposite too often. The last interaction Emily and I had was at the closing appointment for the house. We signed separate stacks of paper at opposite ends of the table. No hostility, just fatigue. As we stood to leave, she said. I never thought it would end this quietly. It wasn't quiet, I said. It was contained. She didn't argue. Outside, the sky was clear. No dramatic weather. Just Arizona sun reflecting off parked cars. I drove away without checking my phone. In the weeks that followed, my schedule simplified. Shift, gym, groceries, early sleep. I stopped replaying the photo in my mind. It had done its work. What surprised me most wasn't relief. It was steadiness. There was no narrative left to defend, no image to maintain, no version of events to protect. One truth had surfaced. I acknowledged it once. Then I stepped back. I live in a smaller place now. The mornings are quieter. Coffee at 6:30 still, but no shared calendar on the fridge. No foundation emails echoing from the kitchen table. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. The first few weeks, I kept expecting noise, fallout, confrontation, some delayed wave of emotion. It never came. What came instead was space. Space to think without defending anything. Space to move through a day without monitoring tone or reading between sentences. Space inside my head that hadn't existed in years. People assume the end of a marriage feels like failure. It didn't feel like that. It felt like removing a beam that had been carrying weight it wasn't designed for. Once it was gone, the structure adjusted. Smaller, yes, but stable. I don't check messages with hope anymore. I read them for information. I don't scan faces for reassurance. I trust what's visible. Sometimes truth doesn't arrive as an argument. It arrives as a photo, a detail, a sequence that no longer fits. You acknowledge it once. Then you stop protecting what isn't real. And you build again, quieter, cleaner, without pretending the cracks aren't there. That's enough for me. That's the end of this story. If you made it all the way here, consider subscribing to stay with us. I've placed a couple of recommended videos on screen for you. Pick one and keep watching. I'll see you in the next story.